$2 billion? Don't mind if I do. Wait, what are the strings attached? Picture this. You're Harvard University. You're sitting on a massive endowment, but hey, $2 billion is $2 billion. Then the Trump administration comes knocking with a big fat check. Sounds great, right? Well, there's a catch. Actually, there are several. And they're doozies. This wasn't your typical, we'll give you money, you do some research deal. Oh no, this was a full-blown attempt to control what Harvard teaches, researches, and even thinks. We're talking about dictating what students can learn, who they can learn from, and what opinions they're allowed to have. Imagine a world where your education depends on the whims of whoever happens to be in the White House. It's enough to make your hair stand on end. This is where the story gets interesting, because Harvard, to its credit, told the Trump administration to shove their money where the sun don't shine. It was a bold move, a principled stand, and it set the stage for an epic showdown between academic freedom and government overreach. So what were these outrageous demands that made Harvard say no thanks to 2 billion smackaroos? Buckle up, because it's a wild ride. First up, the Trump administration wanted to control the curriculum. They were particularly keen on something called patriotic education, which sounds lovely on the surface, but is actually about as subtle as a sledgehammer. Think less learning about the Constitution and more blindly praising America, no matter what. Then there were the restrictions on international partnerships, because apparently collaborating with foreign scholars is somehow un-American. And don't even get me started on the demands to monitor student viewpoints and shut down diversity programs. Oh, and they also wanted to dictate how Harvard dealt with anti-Semitism on campus. Now, don't get me wrong, anti-Semitism is abhorrent and should be addressed head-on. But the Trump administration's definition of anti-Semitism was so broad it could encompass anything from actual hate speech to simply criticizing the Israeli government. In short, these weren't just conditions, they were chains. Chains designed to shackle academic freedom and turn universities into mouthpieces for a particular political agenda. Faced with these draconian demands, Harvard did something unexpected. They grew a spine, they looked at the $2 billion, they looked at their principles, and they said, you know what, we're good. It was a gutsy move, especially considering the potential consequences. But for Harvard, it was about more than just money. It was about protecting something far more valuable, their independence. In a statement that should be printed on T-shirts and plastered on billboards, Harvard declared that it values its independence and the freedom to pursue truth without political interference. They recognized that accepting the money would be tantamount to selling their soul, to becoming just another cog in the government's propaganda machine, and they refused to let that happen. Harvard's rejection was a powerful message that academic freedom is not for sale, not at any price. It was a line in the sand, a declaration that they would not be bullied into compromising their values. Section 4, Trump's temper tantrum, threats and retaliation. Now, you might think that a billionaire businessman turned politician would understand the concept of a deal falling through. You'd be wrong. Donald Trump, a man known for his thin skin and even thinner grasp of complex issues, threw a full-blown temper tantrum. He took to Twitter, or whatever he was using at the time, to rant about how unfair it all was. He accused Harvard of being elitist and out of touch, which is a bit rich coming from a guy who inherited a fortune and lives in a gold-plated penthouse. But Trump didn't stop at name-calling. He threatened to revoke Harvard's tax-exempt status, a move that would have had serious financial implications for the university. This was classic Trump lashing out, making threats and generally behaving like a toddler who'd been denied a cookie. It was petty, it was vindictive, and it was downright scary. Because behind the bluster there was a chilling message: step out of line and there will be consequences. It was a blatant attempt to silence dissent and punish anyone who dared to defy him. Section 5, Academic Freedom versus Government Overreach, a tale as old as time. The clash between Harvard and Trump might seem like an isolated incident, but it's actually part of a much larger battle that's been raging for centuries. The battle between academic freedom and government control. Throughout history, governments have tried to control what's taught in schools and universities. They recognize that knowledge is power, and they want to control that power for themselves. But academic freedom is essential for a healthy democracy. It allows scholars to pursue the truth wherever it may lead, without fear of censorship or reprisal. It allows students to be exposed to a wide range of ideas, even ones that some might find uncomfortable. When governments start dictating what can and cannot be taught, when they start punishing dissent and rewarding conformity, it creates a chilling effect on intellectual discourse. It stifles innovation, it limits creativity, and it ultimately hurts society as a whole. The fight over funding for universities is just one front in this ongoing battle. It's about who gets to decide what knowledge is valuable, who gets to define the boundaries of acceptable thought, and who gets to shape the minds of future generations.